Welcome to SheBoss. Today's going to be a very exciting day. It's always fun when you get to invite a fellow creative in because there's just some fun stuff that you can chat about. And we're definitely going to do that today with Keri. So thank you so much for being here. I'm so excited. Yes. And Keri Woodall is the co-owner and chief strategist at the Library of. I had to look at this because I'm like, I know exactly what you do, but sometimes I'm like, I know. But Keri has been working with a company here in North Alabama called the Library of. And you and your team create some of the most unbelievable, beautiful videos, short, long form, all sorts of in between, capturing stories of brands in such a beautiful way that is just, it's beautiful. Like it really is. And anybody who knows who you guys are know that like this is the real deal and y'all are just doing amazing work. So, yes, of course, and we're gonna talk all about that. And I am so excited too because you've got a husband and wife power couple running the Library of, which I love so much. And it's just been awesome to see you guys kind of be this duo working, behind the scenes with things, and you're just amazing. So it's been a lot of fun getting to know you. But let's let everybody else get a chance to know you too, because your background is something that is really fascinating and very, I think, varied in the different perspectives that you've had a chance to learn, and we've chatted about this a lot. So let's just kind of start from the beginning. We'll talk about where you're from and what kind of brought you to Huntsville and a little bit about your
Yeah,
professional
for sure.
background.
Well, I grew up mostly in Oklahoma, so that's where I spent, elementary, middle, high school, and college. So I graduated from the University of Oklahoma, have a marketing degree. And when I graduated, well, when I was getting ready to graduate from college, I love Oklahoma, but I knew I wanted to kind of expand my horizons and maybe start my career somewhere else. And Nashville kind of just like I don't know. There was something about Nashville that, like, appealed to me. I had never even visited there, but I was like, "It seems like a cool, like, creative city," and I have an aunt and uncle and cousins who live there, and so I was like, "Well, maybe I should move to Nashville." So my aunt actually was like, "Hey, when you graduate, come out, stay with us for the summer, see how you like Nashville." She got me connected with a nonprofit that she was working at as an intern. And so I just took the leap without having ever visited. After like 2 weeks after I graduated college, moved out to Nashville, and it was just sort of an experiment. Am I gonna like this city? Besides my family, I didn't know anyone there.
That's
Um
bold. That's
I
a
know,
bold
sometimes I'm like,
move.
"Did I really do that?" It was, I mustered up the courage to do it. But it was awesome, and I loved it so much that I ended up staying in Nashville for 12 years. So I'd worked at the nonprofit kind of as a marketing intern and then kinda moved into, like, another marketing role, at the nonprofit. Did that for about 3 years and then moved on to an agency called Epsilon, and we did email and direct mail marketing for Nissan North America. So most of my time was spent in the Nissan headquarters, which was really cool and I mean, great learning experience, like fast paced, as you can imagine, with in auto, such a huge name as Nissan, and just learned a ton. Ended up being an account supervisor there. And then from there, I ended up getting a job at Ramsey Solutions. If you're familiar with Dave Ramsey, finance guru. Um, so actually ended up getting a position in the business boutique department. So it was a brand that they had just launched. Christy Wright was the personality, and it was all about helping women start and grow businesses.
Yeah. I've heard her she's a podcast, right? Yes.
So that was so fun to work on. From there, I moved into the entree leadership team. Similar thing, just helping small business owners grow their businesses. So it was cool that I got to firsthand get to meet and interact with our clients who were these small business owners. So inspiring. I secretly wanted to be one of them. I kind of always had like a desire for entrepreneurship and learning all these foundational business principles um, at Ramsey, being an employee, but also getting to work on these teams that helped coach small business owners. It was such a cool experience that amazingly led me to, there was no way I could have known that I would marry a business owner. But that's what I ended up doing. And So when I met Phil, learned that he owned a video production company. And as soon as we knew we were going to get married, it was pretty obvious that I was going to join him in the business as well. And so just to get to bring my marketing background, and just like my experience having worked on like the entree leadership team and having that kind of business and leadership knowledge base from working at Ramsey was just a huge asset. And, there was no way I could have known how all those pieces would fit together. But it's just like so cool, like looking back and seeing how it just all was orchestrated so beautifully.
So, hindsight's 2020, right? Like, what are some of the things that you were able to take from that entree leadership program that you guys were able to implement now? Because what a great playbook for you to be able to go through and, like, troubleshoot with small business owners to have them hear about some of their challenges, and then you guys are facing them as your own in your own small business.
Yeah. I think, like, a lot of the main things I've taken is, like, how to lead our team. So, things about, like, how to provide clarity in our team's roles. And so, like, this is something I learned, working at Ramsey is we had these things called KRAs, key results area. And so that was essentially like, a more built out job description. So you have kind of an overview of what your role is, but then you have like these kind of key areas of success. So it's like, based on that document, what winning looks like in your role. And you meet with your leader regularly to go over that. So we brought that over to the library of, and we meet with our team once a month individually, each team member. We go over their KRA. Does this feel in line with your role? Is there anything that, that feels off? Like, do you need any more clarity on what you're meant to do or how you can succeed and win in your role? So that was one of the main things, and having like one-on-one meetings with our team members on a regular basis. So that's their time if they have any concerns or any questions, or they're kind of working through anything that they get to meet either with Phil or me. We kind of alternate. Um,
Can I ask you a question on that? So, I'm curious. So, what was the profile makeup of some of the companies that you guys supported at Dave Ramsey when
all
you under the
types.
entree leadership? Okay, so they
Yes,
were all
all
over the
different
place.
industries. They were mostly like definitely small businesses. So like it could have, 5 team members all the way up to like 200 team members, but, kind of more in that small to medium range.
Yeah. I was gonna see if some of the commonalities of challenges that you saw in those companies are the same commonalities that you guys
Yeah.
have experienced on
Yes.
your own a little
Yeah, for
bit.
sure. I mean, aside from just like the people dynamics, which is a huge which is a huge part of leading a business, but also just time management. You would hear when I was on the entree leadership team, I would hear all the time from these small business owners of like how just overwhelmed they were with their time because there were so many demands, right? And there's that whole mentality of like they wanted to be working on the business versus just in the business. And that is like a constant demand that Phil and I experience because there are, all the kind of like nitty gritty things that like we know how to do, we can do, but we want to do because we enjoy it. But at some point, you have to say, "I need to delegate this task so that I can work on things that only I can do as the leader." But that's hard. I mean, you're a business owner, like, I'm sure that's hard for you too. It's just that's such a common thing, I think, for business owners and leaders to, like, relinquish control of certain things so they can delegate it to their team so they can work on the things that only they can do and manage their time well. I mean, we're still learning that, to be honest. Yeah.
And you guys are 6 years in
Uh-huh.
business? Okay, yeah, and constantly growing, which is just yeah. So let's switch gears a little bit. It's gonna play into some of the things that you're talking about now. I wanna talk a little bit about the Library of and really how you guys started and what was the vision that Phil had and, what makes the approach and technique that you guys bring to storytelling special. I think, we were just talking about this before we were getting started, but you all, again, take such a beautiful approach at telling a narrative to a story that brings something to light, whether it be a problem or a solution or a cause. Doing things like you mentioned earlier with the Alabama Mountain Lakes Association, like telling the story of Alabama and how it's accessible to those with disabilities and telling the story through that lens, right? So what is sort of the vision that guides you guys on a day to day? And talk a little bit about just the types of clients that you support, what that process looks like, just a little bit more about the library
Well,
of.
a good place to start is probably, like, with the name. Like, we get asked all the time, like, "The library of what?" And sometimes we actually get phone calls, people looking for the library, like, wanting to check out a book. It's like, "We're not that kinda library." But when Phil, was deciding on a name for the business, he's passionate about story, like you talked about, like, how telling stories, in a compelling way, and so it's like, okay, where's a place that stories are honored and treasured? It's a library, right? So it's like the library of and then fill in the blank, whatever client we're working with at the time. So, I mean, that really is the heartbeat of what we do is we want to honor the people that we get to work with and tell their story with authenticity, and I think that really does drive everything that we do, and we always talk about, like, we start with strategy. Um, Phil always says, like, "You're not funding my hobby," because there are things that maybe we would want to do or pursue from a creative standpoint, but we always wanna make sure it's serving the client. So we start with strategy, like, what are the goals? Who's it for? That's a huge we always start with that question. Who's it for? Like, who's the audience, and how do we appeal to them? And that those questions are gonna inform every creative decision that we make, from lighting to camera movement to what music we select. All of those things are derived from what is the strategy and, what are we aiming to accomplish with this story?
Can I ask you a question? This may seem a little bit cheesy, but I'm curious about some of the questions you guys ask when you're trying to get a hold of the creative vision that the client's going for. And as an example, um, I don't know if you know Christy Miscari, who used to be in town. She was a graphic designer and she now works for Lego over in Germany. Like, so cool. But we were going through a branding process like years and years ago, and she was supporting me in a project. And she goes, "If your brand was a celebrity, who would it be?" And I was like, "Ah, I love that. I love that." Right. I asked that question of Lauren Goins. We were talking about that. And she's like, "Joan Jett," which I was like, if that's not spot on, I don't know what is. So I love that question because it immediately emulates something that the client may be thinking about that might be challenging to get to from a communications perspective, right? So how do you guys kind of ask those questions? And are there particular questions that you ask in that regard that really yields what you're hoping for? Or does it really just depend?
Yeah, some of it depends, like, a lot of times what we like to do is have, like, a strategy session with the client, and we're big Donald Miller fans. I don't know if you're familiar with Donald Miller and Story Brand. So he has a whole framework of, it's all about, um, story and, like, how to basically attach your brand to a story that it's telling. So you as the brand are the guide and your customer is the hero. A lot of times brands have that flipped. They make themselves out to be the hero, and that's backwards. The customer's the hero, and you as the brand, you're guiding them they have a problem. That's why they've come to you. So you're guiding them from the problem to the solution that you have to offer. So Donald Miller, through his story brand framework, that's really a good place for us to start when we can have like a strategy session with a client where we can kind of dig into those questions, that specific framework, internal, external, philosophical problem. What does the customer want? All these things. What is kind of the end result? What does the transformation look like? So that's been a super helpful tool for us to use to guide those conversations. And then one thing that we really like to do is we call them pre-interviews, and it's essentially like if there's going to be, you know, talent that's maybe just an average person. Let's say it's a defense contractor and they wanna feature some of their employees in a video that's meant for recruiting or whatever. We will schedule a handful of interviews, just like kinda Zoom calls with, some of their employees, whether or not they're gonna be featured on camera, it doesn't matter. It's really to hear the heartbeat behind, what are they all about, and being able to dig in, we don't film those, like, it's just for it's our discovery process.
Yeah, it's like
It's
research.
research.
Yeah, like help to let allow them to help set the tone of the goal
Exactly,
you're
and
trying
so
to
then
say.
we'll take notes, and then we'll look at, like, what are some of those consistent themes that we've been hearing through these pre-interviews, and then usually those themes will help inform our creative.
Oh, I
So
like
that's
that. Even if maybe you don't get something specific from someone who's on
yeah,
camera, you have kind of
right,
that little background
right,
noise that
and then
kinda
if we're
helps.
looking for specific stories of, like, maybe who should we feature on camera, doing those pre-interviews will help us to know, like, "Oh, this person had a really compelling story. Let's feature
Right,
them."
right. So, I feel like I have a good answer to this question, but funny enough, there's a lot of people who don't realize about the power of video and how influential and impactful that can be. And one of the things that the library of has done such a beautiful job at is like telling that brand story of organizations that, again, and no dig either way, but if you had someone who was so close to it try to tell that story internally, they would miss a lot, right? Because from an outside perspective, you guys see things that other people do not catch up on, right? And so you've done a beautiful job at helping tell the story of an organization. And right now, in a very competitive market, as you mentioned, GovCon specifically with services, potentially extremely competitive from a recruitment perspective. So it's been a great tool that you can use to help kind of tell that narrative of that story in a lens and a perspective that maybe most people don't get a chance to see. So, talk a little bit about the power of it in that capacity and how you're seeing companies and brands use video to really influence whether it be recruitment or internal growth or even just kind of shift some of the, the efforts that they're trying to influence so heavily. How have you
Yeah.
guys kind of seen
Well, I
video?
think you've probably heard, the saying, like, "A picture's worth 1,000 words." You know, how many more words is video worth, right? To really tell a story and to, share a message that is compelling. When I think about my own behavior on social media or whatever, it's like I wanna stop and watch a video because I'm gonna glean so much more from that than just reading something quick and just moving past it. And I think, brands are starting to pay attention to people's behavior on social media in particular and how video is such a prominent platform for getting a message across. And there's so much more you can share, that's unspoken, of just the the visual, if we're showing someone's office space, it's like, "Wow, that's a cool place to work." It's like you could tell them that, but showing them that is so much more compelling. And so I think video, more uniquely than any other platform, really gives you a glimpse inside of an organization. And not only that, but I think it more than other outlets, like, allows you to connect on an emotional level and, we always say we love to either make people laugh or make them cry when they watch a video because that's what's going to compel people to action if they feel something. And I think there's something so special about video that really connects with the heart and allows people to feel, whether that's joy and humor or whether that's some sentimentality, um, where their heartstrings are tugged on. I think video just does that so beautifully.
Well, and I think today's consumers totally changing right
Yeah.
now, where, and we've done a lot of research on this, but it's just around wanting to be engaged with
Mm.
all the no
Yeah.
to one,
Yes.
right? They want to feel as though you're speaking to them. And you're
Mhm.
that to your point, about some brands who sort of make themselves the hero as
Right.
opposed to the customer
Right.
because they don't know their customer.
That's right.
They just
Yes.
I know.
That's right.
Come
Yeah.
and you lose people right off the bat,
Mhm.
you know. What would you say from a creative perspective to put you on the spot for a
Mhm.
second? Um, what when videos fail to
Mhm.
tell the story of a brand, that
Yeah.
brand story, where do you think oftentimes they fail?
I think a lot of times it is what you just described, where they're not keeping in mind who it's for. That's why we always start with that question. Who's it for? Who's the audience? What are the things what are their pain points? What are their problems? What are their desires? Because if you're not focusing on that, they're not gonna they're not gonna resonate with that. They're not gonna think it's for them. So they're gonna scroll on past. But if you're really, you know, clued into who your target audience is and you can dial in that message, like, that's where you're gonna hit the nail on the head, and I think that's where a lot of brands might miss is where they make it all about them, or maybe they're just trying to keep up with a certain trend, and it's like, no, you gotta kinda zoom out and think more strategically, like, who is it that you're trying to reach, and what do they care about? Mhm.
Yeah, and making sure you meet them where they're at as well, right? Yeah. Yeah, I love that. So what are some big projects you guys are working on this year that you're excited about?
Yeah, so, this was a cool one that came to us fairly recently. Um, it is with North Alabama Tourism, AMLA, and they have initiative where they are trying to show how accessible North Alabama is, for people to travel here. And it's been so cool for us to get to show that. In a compelling way where they're actually bringing in some travel influencers who have some sort of disability, and they are, kinda showing them around North Alabama, all these random different cool places, Space and Rocket Center or whatever, lots of botanical garden, lots of different places, and showing how accessible these places are and why North Alabama is a great spot, to come, and so we get to show up with our video cameras and, it's kind of more a little different than what we normally do. This is very run and gun. We don't have, like, time to, like, set up a whole lighting scene or anything, but it's been so fun, to connect with these individuals and families and tell their story in a really compelling way, and the bigger picture, tell the story of how accessible North Alabama is for people who have all sorts of disabilities. So that's been really fun, yeah.
And what a neat project to be a part of where
Yeah.
you guys are opening up doors for audiences that potentially felt limited or didn't have that knowledge before. Or, I mean, that's a lot of fun. So, can I switch gears and ask you some questions about working with your husband? So, that's, a little bit newer for you guys. So, you came over and joined the library of 2.5, 3 years ago?
It'll be 3 years this summer, so, 2022. So we got married in May, and we thought we were gonna wait a little bit longer for me to join the business, let's be newlyweds first, and then in July, I joined him in the library, like, "Actually, let's just
Yeah.
start."
Yeah. So how's that dynamic been? That's definitely changing gears a little bit, right?
Yeah.
How's that
I
been?
mean, it's funny because I think about all the changes that I have gone through, like, I moved to a new state, I got married, I, now own a business, like, all in the short span of time. But honestly, it's been so fun, like, Phil and I were a little bit older when we met and got married, and I just think it's so sweet how we're kinda making up for lost time in that we get to spend, like, all of our days together, working together and obviously living together, and, so we're just sort of embracing it, and we have very similar personalities, which, some people might think, like, that wouldn't wouldn't work, in a marriage or in a business relationship, but for us, it really does because we see things in a very similar way. But we're different in the ways where it matters too. So we're both perfectionists, but in different ways. So he's very perfectionistic about, like, the way lighting looks or whatever, that's not my forte. So I'm gonna be a little bit more anal on in other areas. So we tend to balance each other out, and we've just been really clear on, like, what is my lane and what is his lane, and then what do we, kinda come together to do, as kinda co-owners.
clear parameters are important.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, for
And
sure.
it's hard, but you gotta maneuver through it and you'll
Yes.
figure it out. So that's exciting. Well, kudos to you guys.
Thank
I know it's
you.
been
We have a lot of
awesome.
fun.
I bet you do.
Mhm.
Your crew looks like they have a blast as well.
Mm.
There's no doubt about that.
We've got the best team, like, honestly, there's 5 of us, including Phil and me, and just our dynamic is just so special. We're just so blessed to have the team that we do, and, like, we eat lunch together every day, like, all 5 of us, and, I know that's not always so common in workplaces, like, to feel kind of like a family, um, and so I treasure that, because I know that's not the case everywhere, but I think because we're so small, we can be really tight-knit, and we know we're all rowing in the same direction, and we all care about the same things, like really serving our clients well, and, knowing that it's a greater purpose than making the library of as successful as it can be, that's important, but, more so is doing excellent work, serving our clients really well, and telling beautiful stories that matter and make a difference and that we can all feel, like, really proud of. So, I think just having kind of those shared values on our team helps us to be really, like, unified, and the dynamic it's just so fun, and it's actually one of our core values, like, we don't take ourselves too seriously. I mean, we're serious about our work, but we have a lot of fun too, because I think that's important. Life's too short to, always be stressed out.
Well, and you can tell that your team is very vested in the
Yeah,
quality of work that you guys do. You
yeah,
can tell that in your work and
yes.
just see that from the outside looking in.
Yeah, thank
So,
you.
yeah,
Yeah,
it's
everyone's super dedicated to their craft, so,
that's
yeah.
awesome. Well, Carrie, thank you so much for spending some time with us. I
Yes.
so appreciate it. And the library of, again, doing amazing, beautiful work in the world of video and just really telling the narrative and the stories of companies that, frankly, can be really challenging to tell, and when you bring a team of creatives in, I mean, you never know, what you're going to yield, but it's going to be something extremely special. So, yeah, we're big cheerleaders of you
Well,
guys.
we're
So
such big fans of you and what you've built with Flourish, and yeah, Phil and I definitely look up to you, and thank you just for all of your support and encouragement along the way.
you got it. You got it. We got to help each other out. So
That's right.
awesome. All right. Thank you, Carrie. We'll see you guys next time.
Yes.